I was standing between rows of books in the Selwood Public Library, stacking returned titles on a cart. It was one of those slow, quiet Friday afternoons, the kind where you can hear the humming of the fluorescent lights and the soft shuffle of pages turning across the room. Nothing about the day felt unusual at first. The weather outside had been oddly warm for early May, the air sticky in that uncomfortable pre-storm way. I remember noticing that earlier when I walked in, but I didn't think anything of it. I just wanted the shift to go by fast so I could head home, maybe heat up leftovers and pass out in front of some terrible documentary. The first scream came just as I was shelving a thick hardcover about wolf migration patterns. It wasn't loud, more like a distant shout, and at first I thought maybe someone had dropped something heavy outside. People yell sometimes. Maybe someone got locked out of their car or stepped in a pothole. But it lingered, rose up again, a full-on scream that made my stomach twist a little. I looked over toward Sophia at the front desk. She was already looking at me, her brows pulled together, the corners of her mouth tight like she was trying to smile it off but failing. She opened her mouth to say something, but then we both heard it. A second scream. Louder, closer. This time, every conversation in the library stopped. The sound cut through the stillness like someone ripping a curtain down the middle. One of the teenagers in the study corner pulled off his headphones and looked around. An older man typing at one of the public computers stood up slowly and peered toward the entrance. Then came the thump. Something slammed against the front glass doors hard enough to rattle them in their frame. Then again. Then again. 3 hard, fast hits. I felt my whole body tense. No one moved at first. Everyone stood there frozen, waiting for someone else to decide what to do. The next sound was what pushed us all over the edge. Claws. Long, sharp, scraping claws on glass. Then the front entrance exploded inward. The glass shattered like a shotgun blast. Screams filled the air as people ducked or ran or just stood there, stunned. Something came through the broken entrance, fast, low to the ground, snarling. I saw flashes of brown fur, something red streaked across its snout. It barreled into a man standing near the returns desk and took him down in one clean motion, jaws clamped down on his throat before he even had time to yell. It was a dog. A shepherd mix, maybe. But it didn't move like any normal dog. Its eyes were wild, fully white like its pupils had vanished. Its mouth frothed thick with foam. Skin was torn around its muzzle like it had bitten through something tougher than bone. There was no hesitation in it, no barking, no warning. It was already deep into the kill. The man was convulsing under it, choking. I wanted to move to help him, but then another blur shot through the door. This one was smaller. At first, I thought it was a cat until I saw the teeth. A raccoon, maybe, but mangy, twisted, like something had starved it for weeks and then injected it with gasoline. Its fur was patchy, its face distorted, eyes black and bulging. It made a shrill, horrible squeal and launched itself at a woman trying to run. She tripped, hit the floor, and the raccoon was on her in a blink, biting her neck like it was burrowing into soil. Blood sprayed up her collar and across the tiles as she flailed. The shepherd had already finished with the first man. It turned to look across the room, actually looked like it was scanning for the next target, and then took off toward the reading tables. That's when I finally moved. I ducked behind the returns cart and bolted for the back hallway. People were screaming in every direction. One man tried to throw a chair at the raccoon and got jumped by another dog that came out of nowhere. A black lab, face half rotted and ears missing. I didn't stay to see what happened to him. I just ran. I burst into the hallway behind the front desk, nearly tripping over my own shoes, and slammed the door behind me. My breath was ragged. My whole chest ached. I stumbled back against the wall and reached for my phone with shaking hands. That's when the alert hit. The screen lit up bright red, buzzing hard like it was trying to shake itself out of my grip. Emergency alert. Selwood County safety warning. Animal attack. Outbreak. All residents. Remain indoors. Secure all windows and doors. Do not approach wild or domestic animals under any circumstances. Extremely aggressive behavior and fatalities reported. This is not a test. I stared at the screen. I read it again. It didn't feel real. Animals? An outbreak? What kind of outbreak makes pets tear people apart like they're trained to kill? Footsteps echoed down the hallway. I spun around, still clutching my phone like a weapon. Someone turned the corner, fast, panicked. It was Sophia. Her shirt was torn and streaked with red, but I couldn't tell if it was hers. She was dragging Mr. Kilner, our janitor, by one arm. His face looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I pulled the door open and helped them inside. Sophia gasped out, "We can't stay here. There's more, at least 4 in the building." Kilner slumped against the wall. "They're not just dogs. I saw a deer in the parking lot, ran straight into a car windshield, then got up again. Its bones were showing and it kept walking." "What the hell is this?" I asked. "Rabies doesn't do that." Sophia shook her head. "It's something else. They're coordinated. They didn't just attack. They waited before coming in, like they were timing it." I felt the color drain from my face. Then we heard it again. Scratching. Right on the other side of the hallway door we just locked. Not frantic, not wild. Steady, calculated. A low growl followed. Then silence. The sound of scratching on the other side of the hallway door wasn't loud, but it was enough to freeze all of us in place. You know that kind of silence when your ears ring from how hard your heart is beating? That's what it felt like. None of us even breathed. We just stood there, staring at the door. It wasn't even locked properly, just the flimsy handle lock, the kind you could pop open with a credit card if you tried hard enough. And whatever was on the other side, it was testing it. Light taps, slow dragging, then nothing. Mr. Kilner stood up straighter, one hand braced against the wall. "We can't stay in here," he whispered. Sophia looked at him, then at me. "There's a side exit through the archives room, remember? Near the back loading dock. If we go now, we can get out before more of them get in." I nodded slowly. I remembered the door. It was barely used. Technically, it was supposed to stay locked from the outside, but we used it during events to bring in tables and boxes. If it hadn't been jammed open or busted through like the front entrance, it could be our best shot. Milo hadn't spoken a word yet. He was still crouched beside the emergency printer cabinet, holding his phone in a death grip. His face was pale and his eyes wide, locked in that 1,000-yard stare you only see in war movies. I knelt down beside him. "Milo," I said, gently placing my hand on his arm. "Hey, you with me?" He blinked, looked at me, then gave the smallest nod. "I saw one of them bite through a guy's throat, like it wasn't even skin." I wanted to lie. Tell him it would be okay. Tell him it was almost over. But we both knew that would be bullshit. So I didn't say anything. I just helped him up, and we followed Sophia and Mr. Kilner down the narrow hallway toward the staff-only entrance to the archives. The hallway lights flickered as we moved. You know the type. Cheap fluorescent tubes that hum and buzz when they're about to die. We moved in single file, pressed against the walls, every creak of the floor making me jump. The library didn't seem peaceful anymore. It felt like it was holding its breath. We turned a corner and entered the archives room. It was pitch dark. Sophia reached for the light switch, but I grabbed her hand. "No, we don't know if it'll draw them." We paused, letting our eyes adjust. I could make out the shapes of filing cabinets, long tables, and metal shelves lined with old boxed newspapers and archived town records. It smelled like dust and plastic and something else. Something metallic and sour that I didn't want to name. Halfway through the room, something fell. A soft clatter. We all froze. "What was that?" Milo whispered, his voice cracking. I tried to peer through the dark. Then we heard breathing, low, heavy, wet, coming from behind one of the tables. It wasn't like a human breathing through their nose. It was deeper, more like the kind of rasp you'd hear from an animal after a long run, except it was wrong. It was off rhythm, like it couldn't quite control its lungs anymore. We backed up slowly, one step at a time. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely keep my phone steady as I opened the flashlight app. I didn't want to use it, but I had to know what we were dealing with. I tapped it on. The beam caught on something crouched low by the floor. It was a coyote, or had been. Its ribs stuck out like they were trying to escape its body. Its skin looked torn in some places and stretched in others, especially around the face, where its jaw hung too wide. The eyes were pure white, bloodshot veins webbed around them like a cracked windshield. It was covered in blood, some dried, some fresh, and as soon as the light hit it, it turned its head like it felt the beam. And then it ran. Not toward us. Outside. It bolted toward the far exit, the very one we'd been heading for, and slammed into the side door like it knew it was there. The metal shook. The door held. But now it knew where we were going. "We can't outrun that thing," Kilner said. "Not in this dark." Sophia didn't wait. She reached under one of the archive tables and pulled out a fire axe. "We don't have to outrun it. We just need to make it outside. I didn't even know we had an axe back here." She handed it to me. I took it. Heavy, cold, familiar in the worst way. "Milo," I said quietly, "you're going to stay between me and Sophia. Kilner's going to take the rear. We move fast. We don't stop. Understand?" He nodded again, but I could see his knees shaking. We ran. Not fast, not sprinting, just enough to move with purpose without making too much noise. The light from my phone shook with every step. We reached the far wall. The exit door was still shut. I put my ear to it. Nothing. I looked back. Everyone was ready, or as ready as we'd ever be. I grabbed the handle and pushed. The door opened onto a loading dock bathed in late afternoon sunlight. It was blinding for a moment after the dark of the archives, and that split second nearly cost us. There were 3 of them. 2 dogs, 1 raccoon, already on the platform. All of them turned at the same time, like they shared the same brain. One of the dogs, some kind of Rottweiler, charged straight for Milo. I didn't think. I just swung the axe. The blade connected with a sickening crack, and the dog dropped, twitching. Blood sprayed my jeans and hit Milo across the arm. He screamed, staggered back. The other 2 lunged. Sophia kicked the raccoon mid-air and sent it flying into a trash bin. Kilner grabbed a broom handle and jabbed it at the second dog, driving it backward long enough for us to push out onto the dock. "Go! Now!" I yelled. We ran. I didn't even know where we were going. Just away. Down the steps, across the cracked pavement, behind the dumpsters, past the service gate. There was a van parked on the other side. The back doors were open. A man stood beside it, eyes wide, hand raised. "Over here!" he yelled. He didn't have to tell us twice. We didn't ask questions. We ran straight toward the van. The guy standing beside it, early 40s maybe, wearing an EMT uniform jacket, grabbed Milo by the arm and helped him inside. I shoved the axe into the back, climbed in behind them, and pulled Sophia in after me. Kilner slammed the doors shut just as another animal, a fox I think, darted out from between 2 cars. The man bolted for the driver's seat. "Hang on!" he shouted, already turning the ignition. "They're everywhere!" The van jerked into gear and peeled out of the lot so fast I nearly lost my balance inside. I grabbed one of the metal shelving units, bolted to the wall, and held on as we turned the corner. The library disappeared behind us. Smoke and dust trailed up into the sky, and for the first time, I got a clear look at what was happening outside the library's walls. It wasn't just us. On the street, 2 cars had crashed into each other at an intersection. One was still running, horn blaring. A woman sat motionless in the driver's seat, blood running down the side of her face. In front of a coffee shop, a man was lying face down on the sidewalk, his leg twisted unnaturally. A small animal, some kind of possum or maybe a skunk, was chewing at his shoulder. People were running in all directions, slamming doors, dragging others inside buildings. There were more animals than I could count. Raccoons, squirrels, dogs, even birds. Some dead, some still moving. A flock of pigeons dive-bombed a man trying to get into his truck, pecking at his head and neck. It didn't look random. It looked like an attack. I sat down hard on the floor of the van, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. Sophia was sitting next to me, hand clamped over a fresh bite on her arm. Milo was in the corner, staring blankly at the wall, still shaking. Kilner was the first to speak. "Who the hell are you?" The man driving kept his eyes on the road but answered fast. "Greg Carraway, EMT out of East Selwood. I was on call when the first reports came in. Animal attacks near the dog park. Thought it was one crazy case. Then the calls just kept coming. I was heading back to the station when I saw you guys running." "Where are we going?" I asked. "There's a shelter they're setting up at the high school. Emergency responders are trying to regroup there. If it's still standing, that's where we're headed." "If," Sophia repeated, eyes narrowing. Carraway didn't respond. I looked at Sophia's arm. The bite was deep, jagged, not clean like a dog nip. The skin was torn in a way that looked wrong. Like whatever bit her didn't just want to wound her. It wanted to infect her. I didn't say that out loud. The van sped down Main Street, weaving past abandoned cars and debris. We passed a gas station that had clearly gone up in flames, black smoke curling into the sky. A few blocks down, a grocery store had all its front windows broken out. We didn't stop to check why. Then my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't want to look, but the vibration wouldn't stop. A new alert. Secondary. Alert. Update. Reports confirm airborne transmission from infected animals through bite or scratch. Signs of infection may present within minutes to hours. Disorientation, loss of coordination, visual impairment, heightened aggression. If you have been bitten, scratched, or had contact with infected saliva, report to medical personnel immediately. This is a Level 4 containment event. I turned to Sophia slowly. She was still gripping her arm, knuckles white, sweat now beading on her forehead. She read the alert over my shoulder. Then she looked at me. "Don't," she whispered. I'm fine. But she wasn't. Kilner saw it too. He moved to the other side of the van without saying a word. Milo finally spoke. "She saved me. Back there. She kicked that raccoon. If she hadn't..." He trailed off. We didn't respond. We couldn't. We all felt the same weight pressing down on us. The helplessness. The fact that even when you did the right thing, it didn't save you. The van hit a pothole and bounced. Carraway swore and pulled hard to avoid a fallen streetlight. "Almost there," he called. "Just hang in." We turned onto the school's access road. The high school sat at the top of a small hill, surrounded by chain-link fencing. I could see patrol cars outside, lights still flashing, a fire truck, maybe a dozen people standing by the gym entrance waving us in. Then something slammed into the side of the van. It hit so hard the whole vehicle rocked sideways. We heard the crunch of metal on metal and a deep guttural growl. "What was that?" I shouted. Another hit. The van started tipping. Carraway hit the brakes and tried to steer, but it was too late. The rear tires lifted off the ground and the whole van flipped. We rolled. Hard. Once. Twice. I blacked out somewhere during the second spin. My shoulder slammed against the shelving and everything went sideways. When I came to, the van was still. Smoke drifted up from the dashboard. I was upside down. Blood ran down my face from somewhere near my temple. My mouth tasted metal and dirt and panic. I blinked, coughed, and tried to push myself up, but my leg was pinned, crushed under the twisted frame of the shelving unit. "Sophia?" I rasped. She was 5 feet away, lying on her side, unmoving. Her arm looked worse now, purple around the wound, the skin blackened at the edges. "Milo?" I called. No answer. Caraway kicked open what used to be the side door. "Move if you can. We've got company." Outside, I heard barking. Not normal barking. The kind of sound that doesn't belong on this planet. Caraway's voice was sharp and clear now. His EMT training kicking in like a switch had been flipped. He braced his shoulder against the side panel of the wrecked van, using both arms to wedge the door open wide enough to crawl through. Smoke billowed in around us, mixing with the heat and the sour stench of gasoline. "Anyone that can move, out, now!" he shouted. I tried to push myself free, but my leg was still stuck under the twisted shelving. Pain shot up through my thigh like someone had jabbed me with a live wire. I grabbed the edge of the door frame and pulled, hard, ignoring the burning in my side. The metal scraped my shin, but I managed to twist just enough to yank my leg out with a sickening pop. I collapsed to the ground outside the van, sucking air through clenched teeth. Everything hurt. My ribs, my shoulder, my leg. Hell, even my jaw felt like I'd been punched by a freight train. I tried to stand, but my right leg buckled under me. Caraway was already pulling Milo out by the arm. The kid was groggy, dazed, but alive. He had a deep gash across his cheek and blood all over his jeans, but he could stand. That was more than I could say. Sophia was still inside. She hadn't moved. Caraway and I locked eyes, and I didn't even need to ask. He crawled back into the van, navigating the wreckage with grim determination. I tried to keep my eyes on the gym doors across the parking lot. A group of people were running toward us, 2 in paramedic gear, one with a rifle slung across his chest. Another wore a police vest. They were shouting, waving, but I couldn't hear a word over the ringing in my ears. Then I saw them. The animals. They came from the tree line just past the school's back field. Dozens of them. All kinds. Dogs, raccoons, a few feral cats, even what looked like a badger. Their bodies were mangled, scarred, moving like marionettes whose strings had been frayed. Some dragged their legs, others sprinted full speed, mouths open, tongues lolling, all of them coming toward us, fast. Caraway dragged Sophia halfway out the side of the van before he stopped. She opened her eyes. Her skin was pale, almost blue around her lips, and the wound on her arm was oozing something thick and black. She looked up at him, then at me, and gave the smallest shake of her head. "Go," she rasped. "No," I called, stumbling toward them. "We're not leaving you." She gritted her teeth and pushed weakly against the doorframe. I can't see anymore. My fingers are numb. It's already in me." Caraway looked from her to the approaching swarm. The first few animals had already cleared the fence. Sophia coughed, blood spraying her chin. "You leave me, or we all die." He didn't argue. He set her down gently, wiped his hands on his jacket, and jumped out of the van. Milo had already started running toward the responders at the gym. He was fast for a kid that had just survived a crash, and I used him as motivation, limping after him as best I could. Caraway grabbed me by the arm and practically carried me, one arm around my ribs, the other under my shoulder. My leg screamed in protest, but I didn't stop. Behind us, Sophia pulled the van's first aid box toward her. I saw her fumbling with something inside. Gauze, maybe a syringe, maybe something else. Her silhouette in the wreckage burned itself into my brain. By the time we made it halfway across the parking lot, the animals had reached the van. They didn't hesitate. They swarmed it like piranhas. Then came the sound. Gunfire. Short bursts. Steady aim. The guy with the rifle dropped 3 of them in seconds. One of the medics, short, round glasses, barely out of her 20s, ran toward us with a stretcher. I waved her off and collapsed into the grass, panting, clutching my leg. "We've got him," she shouted. "Get the kid inside," someone else yelled. They pulled Milo toward the gym doors as I was loaded onto the stretcher. I looked back just once. Sophia was gone. The animals were still tearing through the van, blood and metal and limbs all mixed into a single violent mess. One of the medics injected something into my arm. Cold. Immediate. Everything went dim around the edges. When I woke up again, I was inside the high school gym. The basketball hoops had been retracted, the bleachers pushed back. Makeshift cots filled the floor, spaced out in awkward rows. Portable dividers sectioned off areas where people were being triaged. A generator hummed in the background, and overhead, lights flickered like dying stars. Caraway sat next to my cot. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled up. There was blood on his forearms, but his hands were clean. "How long?" I asked, my throat dry and raw. "About 3 hours," he said. "You've got a hairline fracture in your tibia. They splinted it. You'll live." I sat up slowly. "Milo?" "Resting. Bit of shock, but no bites." "And Sophia?" He didn't answer. That was all I needed. The gym wasn't quiet. People were crying in the corners. Others argued softly. A woman paced near the doors with a baseball bat, muttering something about her daughter. An older man near the back rocked back and forth, whispering prayers I couldn't understand. "How bad is it?" I asked Caraway. He took a breath. "Worse than anyone thought. It's not just local. There are reports from 4 other counties. One of the responders thinks it might be statewide." Jesus. They think it started with a wildlife control experiment gone wrong. Something about a neurological vaccine that mutated in a fox population, spread faster than they could track, jumped to domestic animals. Everything snowballed after that. "Is it airborne?" I asked, remembering the second alert. "No," he said. "Still just through bites and scratches. But it doesn't matter. Too many people are getting hurt trying to help. Too many don't know what they're walking into." A loud crash at the far end of the gym made us both turn. One of the side doors shook violently. "False alarm," someone called. "Just the wind." Nobody believed that. Everyone stared at the door for a full minute before the noise died down. Caraway stood. "Get some rest. If this place holds until morning, we're lucky." "And if it doesn't?" He looked at me with the kind of expression you only see in people who've already made peace with something awful. "Then we run again." I didn't sleep. Even though they gave me something, a mild sedative, I think, I couldn't do it. I lay there on the cot, staring at the gym ceiling, watching the lights flicker, and trying not to count how many times I heard someone crying. Every now and then, someone would start coughing, or yelling in their sleep, or whispering into a phone that didn't seem to have a signal. The storm outside had moved in during the night. Rain tapped at the school's metal roof, wind howling through the gymnasium's vents. It should have been comforting, almost peaceful, if not for the fact that every sound might be covering up footsteps, or worse. At one point, I tried to sit up and find Milo, but my splinted leg screamed at me and I gave up halfway. Eventually, the sun came up. Weak, gray light slipped through the upper gym windows and cast long shadows over the rows of cots. The place smelled like sweat, antiseptic, and fear. Some people were already packing their bags. Others just sat on the edges of their beds, staring at nothing. The mood had shifted. No one said it, but you could feel it. This place wasn't going to hold. Caraway reappeared around 7 a.m., holding a mug of what might have been coffee and a folder in his other hand. He dropped into the chair beside me and handed it over. "You're cleared for transport," he said. "Transport where?" I asked, blinking at him. "There's a military quarantine site about 40 miles northeast, just outside Red Pine. They're calling it the Green Zone. Evac helicopters are supposed to start taking survivors out by noon, if the airfield holds." "And if it doesn't?" He didn't answer. I opened the folder. My name, a barcode, a list of my vitals from the med team. "They tagged me?" I said, confused. "It's tracking," Caraway said. "Everyone here is assigned a file now. They're keeping tabs on symptoms. Bites, fever, neurological responses. Everything. They're not messing around anymore." I almost asked about Sophia again, but I didn't. Instead, I looked around. What about the others? Only people without wounds are getting moved first. You're on the list because your injury is clean. No bite, no break in the skin. You're lucky. I didn't feel lucky. Then the fire alarm went off. One long, screeching tone. It wasn't a test. Chaos hit in under 10 seconds. People screamed, bolted upright. The overhead lights cut out at the same time. Dead black, emergency red backups flickering to life. Caraway was on his feet instantly, tossing the chair aside and grabbing my arm. Go, now! I didn't argue. I pushed up, leaned into him, and hobbled forward. My leg throbbed but didn't collapse. People were flooding toward the main doors, some tripping over cots, others dragging children. A man near the divider curtains was yelling for his wife. I saw Milo a few feet away, clinging to a woman I didn't recognize, both of them crying. One of the gym's side doors slammed open. They got in. 3 dogs, feral, blood-drenched, eyes glowing in the red lights. They didn't even hesitate. One jumped straight onto a woman's back, biting down on her shoulder as she screamed and thrashed. The other 2 tore through the crowd like bullets. I saw a medic go down, then another. Caraway spun me around and pulled me toward the locker room door. This way, come on. We ducked into the locker hallway just as another crash echoed behind us. I heard someone shouting, maybe orders, maybe just panic, but the gym was beyond saving now. Inside the locker hallway, the emergency lights barely reached the end. It was narrow, humid, filled with the lingering smell of old socks and disinfectant. We moved fast, my arm over Caraway's shoulder. I tried not to limp, but it was getting worse. Each step felt like something inside my shin was snapping. We reached a side exit marked "Maintenance Only." It was propped open with a broken mop handle. Outside was chaos. Smoke, sirens, people running between school buses in the lot. One of the buses was on fire. Someone had driven it into the fencing and crashed it into a tree. The responders had lost control. I turned to Caraway. Where's the evac point? He pointed toward the football field just past the loading dock. Helicopter's supposed to land in the north corner, but I don't think it's waiting. Gunfire rattled off in the distance. A short burst, then nothing. We ran. Or I limped and Caraway dragged. We ducked behind the bleachers and moved past the concession stand, staying low. I saw 2 people, both responders, lying in the grass, unmoving. One of them had been mauled. I looked away before I could see the rest. At the north end of the field, the chopper was already there. Its blades were spinning. There were people lined up at the gate, maybe 20. Soldiers in gray fatigues were waving them through, weapons drawn. Everyone was screaming, pushing. One woman got shoved and trampled. No one stopped. Move! One of the soldiers shouted at us. We cut across the field, dodging abandoned bags and torn fencing. Then I heard it, not growling this time, not barking. It was a roar, from behind the bleachers. A bear. Or what had once been one. It came lurching out, massive and wrong, its fur falling off in clumps, its face a mangled wreck. The front of its snout looked caved in, but it didn't care. Its eyes were completely white, and blood poured from its mouth with every snort. The crowd at the gate panicked. The soldiers opened fire, but the thing didn't drop. It barreled forward, crashing into the line of evacuees, sending bodies flying. One of the soldiers went under it and didn't come back up. Caraway didn't stop. He pulled me harder, cutting across the track toward the side of the helicopter. A medic saw us coming and waved. Hurry! We reached the door as the bear collapsed behind us, finally going down under a dozen rounds. Screams still filled the field. More animals were coming out of the woods. We were the last 2 on board. The medic slammed the side door shut and banged on the wall. Go! The helicopter lifted off, blades slicing the air. I looked out the small window as we rose. The school shrank beneath us. The gym, the buses, the trees, people still running, still fighting, still falling. And through it all, more creatures kept coming. Animals that shouldn't be there, that weren't supposed to be violent. Rabbits, goats, even deer, eyes white, mouths open, moving with that same horrifying intention. Selwood was gone. Caraway sat across from me, staring at the floor. I asked the only thing that mattered now. "Is there a cure?" He didn't look up. "No," he said, "but there might be time." The helicopter banked hard, throwing me sideways as it rose higher into the sky. I looked out the small window again, watching the ground fall away. The patchwork of trees and streets below slowly turned into a blurry mess of color. It looked peaceful from here, too peaceful for what was happening below. We hadn't left the danger behind. We were just a little farther away from it. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I felt sick. Everything about this felt wrong, like I'd stepped out of the chaos only to find myself trapped in a moment that was just as bad, if not worse. Sophia was dead. The others, I had no idea. Caraway hadn't said much about the others at the shelter. He just moved. He kept moving. I glanced over at him. He was staring at the floor, his hands folded in his lap, eyes unfocused. He didn't look like an EMT anymore. He looked like someone who'd lost something too, but wasn't talking about it. I knew it wasn't just the injury or the exhaustion. He was dealing with something else. I opened my mouth to say something, but then the chopper made a sudden dip, throwing me off balance. I gripped the seat to steady myself. We were flying straight toward the quarantine site. The green zone, they called it. I had no idea what it would look like or who else would be there, but I couldn't ignore the reality anymore. We were running from something that didn't have a cure, something that had no end. I swallowed hard. I needed to ask. "Caraway," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "What happens when we get to the green zone? What's the plan?" He didn't look up, but I could see his jaw tighten. "There is no plan. Not really. They'll do what they can. Keep the rest of us contained. They're still working on a way to slow it down." He paused, the silence stretching between us. "But we both know it's just buying time." I wanted to argue. I wanted to ask if there was anything we could do. But I couldn't. The reality hit too hard. People like Sophia didn't make it. And the others? What would happen to them? For a second, I felt completely numb. The wind outside howled against the chopper, the sound picking up as we flew higher, like it was fighting us, trying to pull us back. I turned away from the window, trying to shake off the rising panic. I glanced at the other survivors. Milo, sitting quietly in the back corner, his eyes lost in the distance. He was still in shock. I'd heard people say that when you lose someone, sometimes it takes a while to process it. But when we'd gotten on the chopper, I'd seen the look in his eyes. He didn't need time to process. He knew what had happened. Caraway stood up then, breaking the silence. "Listen up," he said, his voice steady, but I could tell he was holding something back. "We'll be landing in 10 minutes. They're waiting for us." I barely heard him. I was too focused on the ground below, the flashing red lights near the landing zone, the chaotic mess of trucks and soldiers. They had set up barricades, creating a perimeter, blocking off the area. I didn't know what they were trying to protect. I didn't think they knew either. The chopper dropped in a hard, sudden descent, pulling us forward. I felt my stomach lurch, the roar of the engine becoming louder as we closed in on the landing pad. It hit me then. It wasn't just the animals we were running from. It was everything. The world had changed in the span of a single day, and we didn't know if it was going to get better. We didn't know if we were going to get better. The helicopter touched down with a jarring thud, the ground shaking beneath us. I tried to steady myself as the doors were yanked open by 2 soldiers in full gear. They were wearing gas masks and bulletproof vests, their faces hidden behind dark visors. I took one last look at Caraway. "Are we going to be safe here?" I asked. He didn't respond right away, his expression unreadable. Then he just nodded. "We'll be safe for now." I wasn't sure if I believed him. There were too many questions, too many things I didn't understand. But I didn't have time to ask more. We had to move. Caraway was the first one out, leading the way with the soldiers behind him. Milo and I followed, both of us limping from the strain. We passed rows of tents, each one filled with more survivors, some sitting, some lying down, some pacing. There were a few medics working tirelessly, administering IVs, handing out blankets. But the moment I stepped onto the asphalt, I felt it. A strange chill in the air. An unease. We moved toward a medical tent where an officer checked us in, ticking off names from a list. The soldiers were still moving, guiding others into separate areas while I tried to catch my breath. Everything felt like it was happening too fast, but too slowly at the same time. Caraway went off to speak with someone in charge, and I saw Milo staring at the ground, his hands balled into fists. I walked up to him, my heart heavy with something I couldn't place. "We'll get through this," I said, trying to offer comfort. But even I didn't believe it. Not really. He looked at me, his eyes empty. How? How do we get through something like this? I didn't have an answer. The wind kicked up again, howling around us, carrying with it the distant sound of chaos, the reports of animals still running wild, the dark, violent reality that was still closing in on us. We weren't safe. Not really. But for now, for this moment, we were alive. And that was all we had.